Chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Serve me faithfully and live a blameless life. I will make a covenant with you, by which I will guarantee to make you into a mighty nation. At this, Abram fell face down in the dust. Then God said to him, This is my covenant with you. I will make you the father of not just one nation, but a multitude of nations. What's more, I am changing your name. It will no longer be Abram. Now you will be known as Abraham, for you will be the father of many nations. I will give you millions of descendants who will represent many nations. Kings will be among them. I will continue this everlasting covenant between us, generation after generation. It will continue between me and your offspring forever. I will always be your God and the God of your descendants after you. Yes, I will give all this land of Canaan to you and to your offspring forever. And I will be their God. Your part of the agreement, God told Abraham, is to obey the terms of the covenant. You and all your descendants have this continual responsibility. This is the covenant that you and your descendants must keep. Each male among you must be circumcised. The flesh of the foreskin must be cut off. This will be a sign that you and they have accepted this covenant. Every male child must be circumcised on the 8th day after his birth. This applies not only to members of your family, but also to the servants born in your household and the foreign-born servants whom you have purchased. All must be circumcised. Your bodies will thus bear the mark of my everlasting covenant. Anyone who refuses to be circumcised will be cut off from the covenant family for violating the covenant. Then God added, Regarding Sarai your wife, her name will no longer be Sarai. From now on you will call her Sarah, and I will bless her and give you a son from her. Yes, I will bless her richly, and she will become the mother of many nations. Kings will be among her descendants. Then Abraham bowed down to the ground, but he laughed to himself in disbelief. How could I become a father at the age of 100, he wondered. Besides, Sarah is 90. How could she have a baby? And Abraham said to God, Yes, may Ishmael enjoy your special blessing. But God replied, Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son. You will name him Isaac, and I will confirm my everlasting covenant with him and his descendants. As for Ishmael, I will bless him also, just as you have asked. I will cause him to multiply and become a great nation. 12 princes will be among his descendants. But my covenant is with Isaac, who will be born to you and Sarah about this time next year. That ended the conversation, and God left Abraham. On that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael and every other male in the household and circumcised them, cutting off their foreskins exactly as God had told him. Abraham was 99 years old at that time, and Ishmael, his son, was 13. Both were circumcised the same day, along with all the other men and boys of the household, whether they were born there or bought as servants. Chapter 18. The Lord appeared again to Abraham while he was camped near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. One day about noon, as Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent, he suddenly noticed 3 men standing nearby. He got up and ran to meet them, welcoming them by bowing low to the ground.
My lord,
he said,
if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while my servants get some water to wash your feet. Let me prepare some food to refresh you. Please, stay a while before continuing on your journey.
All right,
they said.
Do as you have said.
So Abraham ran back to the tent and said to Sarah,
Quick, get 3 measures of your best flour and bake some bread.
Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a fat calf and told a servant to hurry and butcher it. When the food was ready, he took some cheese curds and milk and the roasted meat, and he served it to the men. As they ate, Abraham waited on them there beneath the trees.
"Where is Sarah, your wife?"
They asked him.
In the tent.
Abraham replied. Then one of them said,
"About this time next year I will return, and your wife Sarah will have a son."
Now Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent nearby. And since Abraham and Sarah were both very old, and Sarah was long past the age of having children, she laughed silently to herself.
How could a worn-out woman like me have a baby?
She thought.
And when my master, my husband, is also so old.
Then the Lord said to Abraham,
Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, "Can an old woman like me have a baby?" Is anything too hard for the Lord? About a year from now, just as I told you, I will return, and Sarah will have a son.
Sarah was afraid, so she denied that she had laughed. But he said, That is not true. You did laugh. Then the men got up from their meal and started on toward Sodom. Abraham went with them part of the way. Should I hide my plan from Abraham, the Lord asked? For Abraham will become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord and do what is right and just. Then I will do for him all that I have promised. So the Lord told Abraham, I have heard that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah are extremely evil, and that everything they do is wicked. I am going down to see whether or not these reports are true. Then I will know. The two other men went on toward Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham for a while. Abraham approached him and said, Will you destroy both innocent and guilty alike? Suppose you find 50 innocent people there within the city. Will you still destroy it and not spare it for their sakes? Surely you wouldn't do such a thing, destroying the innocent with the guilty. Why, you would be treating the innocent and the guilty exactly the same. Surely you wouldn't do that? Should not the judge of all the earth do what is right? And the Lord replied, If I find 50 innocent people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for their sake. Then Abraham spoke again. Since I have begun, let me go on and speak further to my Lord, even though I am but dust and ashes. Suppose there are only 45. Will you destroy the city for lack of 5? And the Lord said, I will not destroy it if I find 45. Then Abraham pressed his request further. Suppose there are only 40. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it if there are 40. Please don't be angry, my Lord, Abraham pleaded. Let me speak. Suppose only 30 are found. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it if there are 30. Then Abraham said, Since I have dared to speak to the Lord, let me continue. Suppose there are only 20. And the Lord said, Then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 20. Finally Abraham said, Lord, please do not get angry. I will speak but once more. Suppose only 10 are found there. And the Lord said, Then for the sake of the 10, I will not destroy it. The Lord went on his way when he had finished his conversation with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his tent. Chapter 19. That evening the two angels came to the entrance of the city of Sodom, and Lot was sitting there as they arrived. When he saw them, he stood up to meet them. Then he welcomed them and bowed low to the ground. My lords, he said, come to my home to wash your feet and be my guest for the night. You may then get up in the morning as early as you like and be on your way again. Oh, no, they said. We'll just spend the night out here in the city square. But Lot insisted. So at last they went home with him. He set a great feast before them, complete with fresh bread made without yeast. After the meal, As they were preparing to retire for the night, all the men of Sodom, young and old, came from all over the city and surrounded the house. They shouted to Lot, "Where are the men who came to spend the night with you? Bring them out so we can have sex with them." Lot stepped outside to talk to them, shutting the door behind him. "Please, my brothers," he begged, "don't do such a wicked thing. Look, I have 2 virgin daughters. Do with them as you wish. But leave these men alone, for they are under my protection." "Stand back," they shouted. "Who do you think you are? We let you settle among us, and now you're trying to tell us what to do? We'll treat you far worse than those other men." And they lunged at Lot and began breaking down the door. But the 2 angels reached out and pulled Lot in and bolted the door. Then they blinded the men of Sodom so they couldn't find the doorway. "Do you have any other relatives here in the city?" the angels asked. "Get them out of this place, sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone else, or we will destroy this city completely. The stench of the place has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it." So Lot rushed out to tell his daughter's fiancés, "Quick, get out of the city. The Lord is going to destroy it." But the young men thought he was only joking. At dawn the next morning, the angels became insistent. "Hurry," they said to Lot. "Take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here. Get out of here right now, or you will be caught in the destruction of the city." When Lot still hesitated, the angel seized his hand and the hands of his wife and 2 daughters and rushed them to safety outside the city, for the Lord was merciful. "Run for your lives," the angels warned. "Do not stop anywhere in the valley, and don't look back. Escape to the mountains, or you will die." "Oh no, my lords, please," Lot begged. "You have been so kind to me and saved my life, and you have granted me such mercy. But I cannot go to the mountains. Disaster would catch up to me there, and I would soon die. See, there is a small village nearby. Please let me go there instead. Don't you see how small it is? Then my life will be saved." "All right," the angel said. "I will grant your request. I will not destroy that little village. But hurry, for I can do nothing until you are there." From that time on, that village was known as Zoar. The sun was rising as Lot reached the village. Then the Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from the heavens on Sodom and Gomorrah. He utterly destroyed them, along with the other cities and villages of the plain, eliminating all life, people, plants, and animals alike. But Lot's wife looked back as she was following along behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. The next morning Abraham was up early and hurried out to the place where he had stood in the Lord's presence. He looked out across the plain to Sodom and Gomorrah and saw columns of smoke and fumes as from a furnace rising from the cities there. But God had listened to Abraham's request and kept Lot safe, removing him from the disaster that engulfed the cities on the plain. Afterward Lot left Zoar because he was afraid of the people there, and he went to live in a cave in the mountains with his 2 daughters. One day the older daughter said to her sister, "There isn't a man anywhere in this entire area for us to marry, and our father will soon be too old to have children. Come, let's get him drunk with wine, and then we will sleep with him. That way we will preserve our family line through our father." So that night they got him drunk, and the older daughter went in and slept with her father. He was unaware of her lying down or getting up again. The next morning the older daughter said to her younger sister, "I slept with our father last night. Let's get him drunk with wine again tonight, and you go in and sleep with him. That way our family line will be preserved." So that night they got him drunk again, and the younger daughter went in and slept with him. As before, he was unaware of her lying down or getting up again. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. When the older daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Moab. He became the ancestor of the nation now known as the Moabites. When the younger daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Ben-Ammi. he became the ancestor of the nation now known as the Ammonites. Chapter 20. Now Abraham moved south to the Negev, and settled for a while between Kadesh and Shur at a place called Gerar. Abraham told people there that his wife Sarah was his sister. So King Abimelech sent for her, and had her brought to him at his palace. But one night God came to Abimelech in a dream and told him, "You are a dead man, for that woman you took is married." But Abimelech had not slept with her yet, so he said, "Lord, will you kill an innocent man? Abraham told me she is my sister, and she herself said, 'Yes, he is my brother.' I acted in complete innocence." "Yes, I know you are innocent," God replied. "That is why I kept you from sinning against me. I did not let you touch her. Now return her to her husband, and he will pray for you, for he is a prophet. Then you will live. But if you don't return her to him, you can be sure that you and your entire household will die." Abimelech got up early the next morning and hastily called a meeting of all his servants. When he told them what had happened, great fear swept through the crowd. Then Abimelech called for Abraham. "What is this you have done to us?" he demanded. "What have I done to you that deserves treatment like this, making me and my kingdom guilty of this great sin? This kind of thing should not be done. Why have you done this to us?" "Well," Abraham said, "I figured this to be a godless place. I thought, they will want my wife and will kill me to get her. Besides, she is my sister. We both have the same father, though different mothers, and I married her. When God sent me to travel far from my father's home, I told her, 'Wherever we go, have the kindness to say that you are my sister.'" Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and servants, both men and women, and gave them to Abraham, and he returned his wife Sarah to him. "Look over my kingdom, and choose a place where you would like to live," Abimelech told him. Then he turned to Sarah. "Look," he said, "I am giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver to compensate for any embarrassment I may have caused you. This will settle any claim against me in this matter." Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and the other women of the household, so they could have children. For the Lord had stricken all the women with infertility as a warning to Abimelech for having taken Abraham's wife. Chapter 21. Then the Lord did exactly what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant, and she gave a son to Abraham in his old age. It all happened at the time God had said it would, and Abraham named his son Isaac. 8 days after Isaac was born, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded. Abraham was 100 years old at the time. And Sarah declared, "God has brought me laughter. All who hear about this will laugh with me. Oh, who would have dreamed that I would ever have a baby? Yet I have given Abraham a son in his old age." As time went by and Isaac grew and was weaned, Abraham gave a big party to celebrate the happy occasion. But Sarah saw Ishmael, the son of Abraham, and her Egyptian servant Hagar, making fun of Isaac. So she turned to Abraham and demanded, "Get rid of that servant and her son. He is not going to share the family inheritance with my son Isaac. I won't have it." This upset Abraham very much because Ishmael was his son. But God told Abraham, "Do not be upset over the boy and your servant wife. Do just as Sarah says, for Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted. But I will make a nation of the descendants of Hagar's son, because he also is your son." So Abraham got up early the next morning, prepared food for the journey, and strapped a container of water to Hagar's shoulders. He sent her away with her son, and she walked out into the wilderness of Beersheba, wandering aimlessly. When the water was gone, she left the boy in the shade of a bush. Then she went and sat down by herself about 100 yards away. "I don't want to watch the boy die," she said, as she burst into tears. Then God heard the boy's cries, and the angel of God called to Hagar from the sky, "Hagar, what's wrong? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy's cries from the place where you laid him. Go to him and comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants." Then God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well. She immediately filled her water container and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy as he grew up in the wilderness of Paran. He became an expert archer, and his mother arranged a marriage for him with a young woman from Egypt. About this time Abimelech came with Phicol, his army commander, to visit Abraham. "It is clear that God helps you in everything you do," Abimelech said. "Swear to me in God's name that you won't deceive me, my children, or my grandchildren. I have been loyal to you, so now swear that you will be loyal to me and to this country in which you are living." Abraham replied, "All right, I swear to it." Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well that Abimelech's servants had taken violently from Abraham's servants. "This is the first I've heard of it," Abimelech said, "and I have no idea who is responsible. Why didn't you say something about this before?" Then Abraham gave sheep and oxen to Abimelech, and they made a treaty. But when Abraham took 7 additional ewe lambs and set them off by themselves, Abimelech asked, "Why are you doing that?" Abraham replied, "They are my gift to you as a public confirmation that I dug this well." So ever since that place has been known as Beersheba, well of the oath, because that was where they had sworn an oath. After making their covenant, Abimelech left with Phicol, the commander of his army, and they returned home to the land of the Philistines. Then Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba, and he worshipped the Lord, the eternal God, at that place. And Abraham lived in Philistine country for a long time. Chapter 22. Later on, God tested Abraham's faith and obedience. "Abraham," God called.
"Yes,"
he replied.
"Here I am."
"Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will point out to you." The next morning Abraham got up early. He saddled his donkey and took 2 of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Then he chopped wood to build a fire for a burnt offering, and set out for the place where God had told him to go. On the 3rd day of the journey, Abraham saw the place in the distance.
"Stay here with the donkey,"
Abraham told the young men.
"The boy and I will travel a little farther. We will worship there, and then we will come right back."
Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the knife and the fire. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac said,
"Father?"
"Yes, my son."
Abraham replied.
"We have the wood and the fire,"
said the boy.
"but where's the lamb for the sacrifice?"
"God will provide a lamb, my son,"
Abraham answered. And they both went on together. When they arrived at the place where God had told Abraham to go, he built an altar and placed the wood on it. Then he tied Isaac up and laid him on the altar over the wood. And Abraham took the knife and lifted it up to kill his son as a sacrifice to the Lord. At that moment the angel of the Lord shouted to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham!"
"Yes,"
he answered.
"I'm listening."
"Lay down the knife," the angel said. "Do not hurt the boy in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld even your beloved son from me." Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a bush. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering on the altar in place of his son. Abraham named the place, "The Lord Will Provide." This name has now become a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. Then the angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven. This is what the Lord says, because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your beloved son, I swear by my own self that I will bless you richly. I will multiply your descendants into countless millions, like the stars of the sky and the sand on the seashore. They will conquer their enemies, and through your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me. Then they returned to Abraham's young men and traveled home again to Beersheba, where Abraham lived for quite some time. Soon after this, Abraham heard that Milcah, his brother Nahor's wife, had borne Nahor 8 sons. The oldest was named Uz, the next oldest was Buz, followed by Kemuel, the father of Abram, Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. In addition to his 8 sons from Milcah, Nahor had 4 other children from his concubine Reumah. Their names were Tebah, Gaam, Tahash, and Maacah. Chapter 23. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died at Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. There Abraham mourned and wept for her. Then, leaving her body, he went to the Hittite elders and said, Here I am, a stranger in a foreign land, with no place to bury my wife. Please let me have a piece of land for a burial plot. The Hittites replied to Abraham, Certainly, for you are an honored prince among us. It will be a privilege to have you choose the finest of our tombs, so you can bury her there. Then Abraham bowed low before them and said, Since this is how you feel, be so kind as to ask Ephron, son of Zohar, to let me have the cave of Machpelah down at the end of his field. I want to pay the full price, of course, whatever is publicly agreed upon, so I may have a permanent burial place for my family. Ephron was sitting there among the others, and he answered Abraham as the others listened, speaking publicly before all the elders of the town. No, sir, he said to Abraham, please listen to me. I will give you the cave in the field. Here in the presence of my people, I give it to you. Go and bury your dead. Abraham bowed again to the people of the land, and he replied to Ephron as everyone listened. No, listen to me, he insisted. I will buy it from you. Let me pay the full price for the field so I can bury my dead there. Well, Ephron answered, the land is worth 400 pieces of silver. But what is that between friends? Go ahead and bury your dead. So Abraham paid Ephron the amount he had suggested, 400 pieces of silver, as was publicly agreed. He bought the plot of land belonging to Ephron at Machpelah near Mamre. This included the field, the cave that was in it, and all the trees nearby. They became Abraham's permanent possession by the agreement made in the presence of the Hittite elders at the city gate. So Abraham buried Sarah there in Canaan, in the cave of Machpelah, near Mamre, which is at Hebron. The field and the cave were sold to Abraham by the Hittites as a permanent burial place. Chapter 24. Abraham was now a very old man, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. One day Abraham said to the man in charge of his household, who was his oldest servant, Swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not let my son marry one of these local Canaanite women. Go instead to my homeland, to my relatives, and find a wife there for my son Isaac. The servant asked, But suppose I can't find a young woman who will travel so far from home? May I then take Isaac there to live among your relatives? No, Abraham warned. Be careful never to take my son there. For the Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and my native land, solemnly promised to give this land to my offspring. He will send his angel ahead of you, and he will see to it that you find a young woman there to be my son's wife. If she is unwilling to come back with you, then you are free from this oath. But under no circumstances are you to take my son there." So the servant took a solemn oath that he would follow Abraham's instructions. He loaded 10 of Abraham's camels with gifts and set out, taking with him the best of everything his master owned. He traveled to Aram Naharaim and went to the village where Abraham's brother Nahor had settled. There the servant made the camels kneel down beside a well just outside the village. It was evening, and the women were coming out to draw water.
O Lord, God of my master,
He prayed.
give me success and show kindness to my master Abraham. Help me to accomplish the purpose of my journey. See, here I am standing beside this spring, and the young women of the village are coming out to draw water. This is my request. I will ask one of them for a drink. If she says, "Yes, certainly, and I will water your camels too," let her be the one you have appointed as Isaac's wife. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master.
As he was still praying, a young woman named Rebekah arrived with a water jug on his shoulder. Her father was Bethuel, who was the son of Abraham's brother Nahor, and his wife Milcah. Now Rebekah was very beautiful, and she was a virgin. No man had ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jug, and came up again. Running over to her, the servant asked,
"Please, give me a drink."
"Certainly, sir,"
she said, and she quickly lowered the jug for him to drink. When he had finished, she said,
"I'll draw water for your camels too until they have had enough."
So she quickly emptied the jug into the watering trough and ran down to the well again. She kept carrying water to the camels until they had finished drinking. The servant watched her in silence, wondering whether or not she was the one the Lord intended him to meet. Then at last, when the camels had finished drinking, he gave her a gold ring for her nose and 2 large gold bracelets for her wrists.
"Whose daughter are you?"
He asked.
"Would your father have any room to put us up for the night?"
"My father is Bethuel.
She replied.
My grandparents are Nahor and Milcah. Yes, we have plenty of straw and food for the camels, and we have a room for guests."
The man fell down to the ground and worshipped the Lord.
"Praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham.
He said,
The Lord has been so kind and faithful to Abraham, for he has led me straight to my master's relatives."
The young woman ran home to tell her family about all that had happened. Now Rebekah had a brother named Laban. When he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrists, and when he heard her story, he rushed out to the spring where the man was still standing beside his camels. Laban said to him,
"Come, stay with us, you who are blessed by the Lord. Why do you stand here outside the village when we have a room all ready for you and a place prepared for the camels?"
So the man went home with Laban, and Laban unloaded the camels, gave him straw to bed them down, fed them, and provided water for the camel drivers to wash their feet. Then supper was served. But Abraham's servant said,
"I don't want to eat until I have told you why I have come."
"All right,
Laban said.
tell us your mission."
"I am Abraham's servant,
He explained.
and the Lord has blessed my master richly. He has become a great man. The Lord has given him flocks of sheep and herds of cattle, a fortune in silver and gold, and many servants and camels and donkeys. When Sarah, my master's wife, was very old, she gave birth to my master's son, and my master has given him everything he owns. And my master made me swear that I would not let Isaac marry one of the local Canaanite women. Instead, I was to come to his relatives here in this far-off land, to his father's home. I was told to bring back a young woman from here to marry his son. "But suppose I can't find a young woman willing to come back with me?" I asked him. "You will," he told me, "for the Lord in whose presence I have walked will send his angel with you and will make your mission successful. Yes, you must get a wife for my son from among my relatives, from my father's family. But if you go to my relatives and they refuse to let her come, you will be free from your oath." So this afternoon, when I came to the spring, I prayed this prayer: "O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if you are planning to make my mission a success, please guide me in a special way. Here I am, standing beside this spring. I will say to some young woman who comes to draw water, Please give me a drink of water. And she will reply, Certainly, and I'll water your camels too. Lord, let her be the one you have selected to be the wife of my master's son." Before I had finished praying these words, I saw Rebekah coming along with her water jug on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water and filled the jug. So I said to her, "Please give me a drink." She quickly lowered the jug from her shoulder so I could drink, and she said, "Certainly, sir, and I will water your camels too." And she did. When I asked her whose daughter she was, she told me, "My father is Bethuel, the son of Nahor and his wife Milcah." So I gave her the ring and the bracelets. Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord. I praised the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, because he had led me along the right path to find a wife from the family of my master's relatives. So tell me, will you or won't you show true kindness to my master? When you tell me, then I'll know what my next step should be, whether to move this way or that."
Then Laban and Bethuel replied,
"The Lord has obviously brought you here, so what can we say? Here is Rebekah. Take her and go. Yes, let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has directed."
At this reply, Abraham's servant bowed to the ground and worshipped the Lord. Then he brought out silver and gold jewelry and lovely clothing for Rebekah. He also gave valuable presents to her mother and brother. Then they had supper, and the servant and the men with him stayed there overnight. But early the next morning he said,
"Send me back to my master."
"But we want Rebekah to stay at least 10 days.
Her brother and mother said,
Then she can go."
But he said,
"Don't hinder my return. The Lord has made my mission successful, and I want to report back to my master."
"Well,"
they said.
"we'll call Rebekah and ask her what she thinks."
So they called Rebekah.
"Are you willing to go with this man?"
They asked her, and she replied,
"Yes, I will go."
So they said goodbye to Rebekah and sent her away with Abraham's servant and his men. The woman who had been Rebekah's childhood nurse went along with her. They blessed her with this blessing as she parted. "Our sister, may you become the mother of many millions. May your descendants overcome all their enemies." Then Rebekah and her servants mounted the camels and left with Abraham's servant. Meanwhile, Isaac, whose home was in the Negev, had returned from Beer-lahai-roi. One evening, as he was taking a walk out in the fields meditating, he looked up and saw the camels coming. When Rebekah looked up and saw Isaac, she quickly dismounted.
"Who is that man walking through the fields to meet us?"
she asked the servant. And he replied,
"It is my master."
So Rebekah covered her face with her veil. Then the servant told Isaac the whole story. And Isaac brought Rebekah into his mother's tent, and she became his wife. He loved her very much, and she was a special comfort to him after the death of his mother. Chapter 25. Now Abraham married again. Keturah was his new wife, and she bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan's two sons were Sheba and Dedan. Dedan's descendants were the Asherites, Ladishites, and Leamites. Midian's sons were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldaah. These were all descendants of Abraham through Keturah. Abraham left everything he owned to his son Isaac. But before he died, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them off to the east, away from Isaac. Abraham lived for 175 years, and he died at a ripe old age, joining his ancestors in death. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, near Mamre, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite. This was the field Abraham had purchased from the Hittites, where he had buried his wife Sarah. After Abraham's death, God poured out rich blessings on Isaac, who settled near Beer-lahai-roi in the Negev. This is the history of the descendants of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, through Hagar, Sarah's Egyptian servant. Here is a list by their names and clans of Ishmael's descendants. The oldest was Nebaioth, followed by Kedar, Abdeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Juma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jeter, Naphish, and Kedemah. These 12 sons of Ishmael became the founders of 12 tribes that bore their names, listed according to the places they settled and camped. Ishmael finally died at the age of 137 and joined his ancestors in death. Ishmael's descendants were scattered across the country from Havilah to Shur, which is east of Egypt, in the direction of Asher. The clans descended from Ishmael camped close to one another. This is the history of the family of Isaac, the son of Abraham. When Isaac was 40 years old, he married Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel the Aramean, from Padan Aram, and the sister of Laban. Isaac pleaded with the Lord to give Rebekah a child because she was childless. So the Lord answered Isaac's prayer, and his wife became pregnant with twins. But the 2 children struggled with each other in her womb. So she went to ask the Lord about it. "Why is this happening to me?" she asked. And the Lord told her, "The sons in your womb will become 2 rival nations. One nation will be stronger than the other. The descendants of your older son will serve the descendants of your younger son." And when the time came, the twins were born. The first was very red at birth. He was covered with so much hair that one would think he was wearing a piece of clothing, so they called him Esau. Then the other twin was born with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so they called him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. As the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open fields, while Jacob was the kind of person who liked to stay at home. Isaac loved Esau in particular because of the wild game he brought home, but Rebekah favored Jacob. One day when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau arrived home exhausted and hungry from a hunt. Esau said to Jacob, "I'm starved. Give me some of that red stew you've made." This was how Esau got his other name, Edom, red. Jacob replied, "All right, but trade me your birthright for it." "Look, I'm dying of starvation," said Esau. "What good is my birthright to me now?" So Jacob insisted. "Well then, swear to me right now that it is mine." So Esau swore an oath, thereby selling all his rights as the firstborn to his younger brother. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and lentil stew. Esau ate and drank and went on about his business, indifferent to the fact that he had given up his birthright. Chapter 26. Now a severe famine struck the land, as had happened before in Abraham's time. So Isaac moved to Gerar, where Abimelech, king of the Philistines, lived. The Lord appeared to him there and said, "Do not go to Egypt. Do as I say and stay here in this land. If you do, I will be with you and bless you. I will give all this land to you and your descendants, just as I solemnly promised Abraham your father. I will cause your descendants to become as numerous as the stars, and I will give them all these lands, and through your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed. I will do this because Abraham listened to me and obeyed all my requirements, commands, regulations, and laws." So Isaac stayed in Gerar. And when the men there asked him about Rebekah, he said, "She is my sister." He was afraid to admit that she was his wife. He thought they would kill him to get her because she was very beautiful. But some time later, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out a window and saw Isaac fondling Rebekah. Abimelech called for Isaac and exclaimed, "She is obviously your wife. Why did you say she was your sister?" "Because I was afraid someone would kill me to get her from me," Isaac replied. "How could you treat us this way?" Abimelech exclaimed. "Someone might have taken your wife and slept with her, and you would have made us guilty of great sin." Then Abimelech made a public proclamation, "Anyone who harms this man or his wife will die." That year Isaac's crops were tremendous. He harvested 100 times more grain than he planted, for the Lord blessed him. He became a rich man, and his wealth only continued to grow. He acquired large flocks of sheep and goats, great herds of cattle, and many servants. Soon the Philistines became jealous of him, and they filled up all of Isaac's wells with earth. These were the wells that had been dug by the servants of his father Abraham. And Abimelech asked Isaac to leave the country. "Go somewhere else," he said, "for you have become too rich and powerful for us." So Isaac moved to the Gerar valley and lived there instead. He reopened the wells his father had dug, which the Philistines had filled in after Abraham's death. Isaac renamed them, using the names Abraham had given them. His shepherds also dug in the Gerar valley, and found a gushing spring. But then the local shepherds came and claimed the spring. "This is our water," they said, and they argued over it with Isaac's herdsmen. So Isaac named the well Argument, because they had argued about it with him. Isaac's men then dug another well, but again there was a fight over it. So Isaac named it Opposition. Abandoning that one, he dug another well, and the local people finally left him alone. So Isaac called it Room Enough, for he said, "At last the Lord has made room for us, and we will be able to thrive." From there Isaac moved to Beersheba, where the Lord appeared to him on the night of his arrival. "I am the God of your father Abraham," he said. "Do not be afraid, for I am with you and will bless you. I will give you many descendants, and they will become a great nation. I will do this because of my promise to Abraham, my servant." Then Isaac built an altar there and worshipped the Lord. He set up his camp at that place, and his servants dug a well. One day Isaac had visitors from Gerar. King Abimelech arrived with his adviser Ahuzzath, and also Phicol, his army commander. "Why have you come?" Isaac asked them. "This is obviously no friendly visit, since you sent me from your land in a most unfriendly way." They replied, "We can plainly see that the Lord is with you, so we decided we should have a treaty or covenant between us. Swear that you will not harm us, just as we did not harm you. We have always treated you well, and we sent you away from us in peace. And now look how the Lord has blessed you." So Isaac prepared a great feast for them, and they ate and drank in preparation for the treaty ceremony. Early the next morning they each took a solemn oath of non-aggression. Then Isaac sent them home again in peace. That very day Isaac's servants came and told him about a well they had dug. "We found water," they said. So Isaac named the well Oath, and from that time to this, the town that grew up there has been called Beersheba, Well of the Oath. At the age of 40, Esau married a young woman named Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite. He also married Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. But Esau's wives made life miserable for Isaac and Rebekah. Chapter 27. When Isaac was old and almost blind, he called for Esau, his older son, and said,
"My son."
"Yes, father?"
Esau replied.
"I am an old man now,
Isaac said,
and I expect every day to be my last. Take your bow and a quiver full of arrows out into the open country and hunt some wild game for me. Prepare it just the way I like it, so it's savory and good, and bring it here for me to eat. Then I will pronounce the blessing that belongs to you, my firstborn son, before I die."
But Rebekah overheard the conversation. So when Esau left to hunt for the wild game, she said to her son Jacob,
I overheard your father asking Esau to prepare him a delicious meal of wild game. He wants to bless Esau in the Lord's presence before he dies. Now, my son, do exactly as I tell you. Go out to the flocks and bring me 2 fine young goats. I'll prepare your father's favorite dish from them. Take the food to your father. Then he can eat it and bless you instead of Esau before he dies.
But Mother,
Jacob replied,
he won't be fooled that easily. Think how hairy Esau is and how smooth my skin is. What if my father touches me? He'll see that I'm trying to trick him, and then he'll curse me instead of blessing me.
Let the curse fall on me, dear son.
said Rebekah.
Just do what I tell you. Go out and get the goats.
So Jacob followed his mother's instructions, bringing her the 2 goats. She took them and cooked a delicious meat dish, just the way Isaac liked it. Then she took Esau's best clothes, which were there in the house, and dressed Jacob with them. She made him a pair of gloves from the hairy skin of the young goats, and she fastened a strip of the goat skin around his neck. Then she gave him the meat dish with its rich aroma and some freshly baked bread. Jacob carried the platter of food to his father and said,
My father?
Yes, my son.
He answered.
Who is it? Esau or Jacob?
Jacob replied,
It's Esau, your older son. I've done as you told me. Here's the wild game, cooked the way you like it. Sit up and eat it, so you can give me your blessing.
Isaac asked,
How were you able to find it so quickly, my son?
Because the Lord, your God, put it in my path.
Jacob replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob,
Come over here. I want to touch you to make sure you really are Esau.
So Jacob went over to his father, and Isaac touched him.
The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are Esau's,
Isaac said to himself. But he did not recognize Jacob because Jacob's hands felt hairy just like Esau's. So Isaac pronounced his blessing on Jacob.
Are you really my son Esau?
He asked.
Yes, of course,
Jacob replied. Then Isaac said,
Now, my son, bring me the meat. I will eat it, and then I will give you my blessing.
So Jacob took the food over to his father, and Isaac ate it. He also drank the wine that Jacob served him. Then Isaac said,
Come here and kiss me, my son.
So Jacob went over and kissed him. And when Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he was finally convinced, and he blessed his son. He said,
The smell of my son is the good smell of the open fields that the Lord has blessed. May God always give you plenty of dew for healthy crops and good harvests of grain and wine. May many nations become your servants. May you be the master of your brothers. May all your mother's sons bow low before you. All who curse you are cursed, and all who bless you are blessed.
As soon as Isaac had blessed Jacob, and almost before Jacob had left his father, Esau returned from his hunting trip. Esau prepared his father's favorite meat dish and brought it to him. Then he said,
I'm back, Father, and I have the wild game. Sit up and eat it so you can give me your blessing.
But Isaac asked him,
Who are you?
Why, it's me, of course,
he replied.
It's Esau, your oldest son.
Isaac began to tremble uncontrollably and said,
Then who was it that just served me wild game? I have already eaten it, and I blessed him with an irrevocable blessing before you came.
When Esau understood, he let out a loud and bitter cry.
Oh, my father, bless me too,
he begged. But Isaac said,
Your brother was here, and he tricked me. He has carried away your blessing.
Esau said bitterly,
No wonder his name is Jacob, for he has deceived me twice, first taking my birthright and now stealing my blessing. Oh, haven't you saved even one blessing for me?
Isaac said to Esau,
I have made Jacob your master, and have declared that all his brothers will be his servants. I have guaranteed him an abundance of grain and wine. What is there left to give?
Esau pleaded.
Not one blessing left for me. Oh, my father, bless me too.
Then Esau broke down and wept. His father Isaac said to him,
You will live off the land and what it yields, and you will live by your sword. You will serve your brother for a time, but then you will shake loose from him and be free.
Esau hated Jacob because he had stolen his blessing. But he said to himself,
My father will soon be dead and gone. Then I will kill Jacob.
But someone got wind of what Esau was planning and reported it to Rebekah. She sent for Jacob and told him,
Esau is threatening to kill you. This is what you should do. Flee to your uncle Laban in Haran. Stay there with him until your brother's fury is spent. When he forgets what you have done, I will send for you. Why should I lose both of you in one day?
Then Rebekah said to Isaac,
I'm sick and tired of these local Hittite women. I'd rather die than see Jacob marry one of them.
Chapter 28. So Isaac called for Jacob, blessed him, and said, Do not marry any of these Canaanite women. Instead, go at once to Padan Aram, to the house of your grandfather Bethuel, and marry one of your uncle Laban's daughters. May God Almighty bless you and give you many children. And may your descendants become a great assembly of nations. May God pass on to you and your descendants the blessings he promised to Abraham. May you own this land where we now are foreigners, for God gave it to Abraham. So Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram to stay with his uncle Laban, his mother's brother, the son of Bethuel, the Aramean. Esau heard that his father had blessed Jacob and sent him to Padan Aram to find a wife, and that he had warned Jacob not to marry a Canaanite woman. He also knew that Jacob had obeyed his parents and gone to Padan Aram. It was now very clear to Esau that his father despised the local Canaanite women. So he visited his uncle Ishmael's family and married one of Ishmael's daughters, in addition to the wives he already had. His new wife's name was Mahalath. She was the sister of Nebaioth and the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son. Meanwhile, Jacob left Beersheba and traveled toward Haran. At sundown he arrived at a good place to set up camp and stopped there for the night. Jacob found a stone for a pillow and lay down to sleep. As he slept, he dreamed of a stairway that reached from earth to heaven, and he saw the angels of God going up and down on it. At the top of the stairway stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham and the God of your father Isaac. The ground you are lying on belongs to you. I will give it to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. They will cover the land from east to west and from north to south. All the families of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. What's more, I will be with you, and I will protect you wherever you go. I will someday bring you safely back to this land. I will be with you constantly until I have finished giving you everything I have promised. Then Jacob woke up and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it. He was afraid and said, What an awesome place this is! It is none other than the house of God, the gateway to heaven. The next morning he got up very early. He took the stone he had used as a pillow and set it upright as a memorial pillar. Then he poured olive oil over it. He named the place Bethel, House of God, though the name of the nearby village was Luz. Then Jacob made this vow, If God will be with me and protect me on this journey and give me food and clothing, and if he will bring me back safely to my father, then I will make the Lord my God. This memorial pillar will become a place for worshiping God, and I will give God 1/10 of everything he gives me. Chapter 29. Jacob hurried on, finally arriving in the land of the east. He saw in the distance 3 flocks of sheep lying in an open field beside a well, waiting to be watered. But a heavy stone covered the mouth of the well. It was the custom there to wait for all the flocks to arrive before removing the stone. After watering them, the stone would be rolled back over the mouth of the well. Jacob went over to the shepherds and asked them, "Where do you live?" "At Haran," they said. "Do you know a man there named Laban, the grandson of Nahor?" "Yes, we do," they replied. "How is he?" Jacob asked. "He's well and prosperous. Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. Why don't you water the flocks so they can get back to grazing?" Jacob asked. "They'll be hungry if you stop so early in the day." "We don't roll away the stone and begin the watering until all the flocks and shepherds are here," they replied. As this conversation was going on, Rachel arrived with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. And because she was his cousin, the daughter of his mother's brother, and because the sheep were his uncle's, Jacob went over to the well and rolled away the stone and watered his uncle's flock. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, and tears came to his eyes. He explained that he was her cousin on her father's side, her Aunt Rebekah's son. So Rachel quickly ran and told her father Laban. As soon as Laban heard about Jacob's arrival, he rushed out to meet him and greeted him warmly. Laban then brought him home, and Jacob told him his story. "Just think, my very own flesh and blood!" Laban exclaimed. After Jacob had been there about a month, Laban said to him, "You shouldn't work for me without pay just because we are relatives. How much do you want?" Now Laban had 2 daughters, Leah, who was the oldest, and her younger sister Rachel. Leah had pretty eyes, but Rachel was beautiful in every way, with a lovely face and shapely figure. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, "I'll work for you 7 years if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife." "Agreed," Laban replied. "I'd rather give her to you than to someone outside the family." So Jacob spent the next 7 years working to pay for Rachel. But his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. Finally the time came for him to marry her. "I have fulfilled my contract," Jacob said to Laban. "Now give me my wife so we can be married." So Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood to celebrate with Jacob at a wedding feast. That night when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob, and he slept with her. And Laban gave Leah a servant, Zilpah, to be her maid. But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. "What sort of trick is this?" Jacob raged at Laban. "I worked 7 years for Rachel. What do you mean by this trickery?" "It's not our custom to marry off a younger daughter ahead of the firstborn," Laban replied. "Wait until the bridal week is over, and you can have Rachel too. That is, if you promise to work another 7 years for me." So Jacob agreed to work 7 more years. A week after Jacob had married Leah, Laban gave him Rachel too. And Laban gave Rachel a servant, Bilhah, to be her maid. So Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved her more than Leah. He then stayed and worked the additional 7 years. But because Leah was unloved, the Lord let her have a child while Rachel was childless. So Leah became pregnant and had a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, "The Lord has noticed my misery, and now my husband will love me." She soon became pregnant again and had another son. She named him Simeon, for she said, "The Lord heard that I was unloved, and has given me another son." Again she became pregnant and had a son. She named him Levi, for she said, "Surely now my husband will feel affection for me, since I have given him 3 sons." Once again she became pregnant and had a son. She named him Judah, for she said, Now I will praise the Lord." And then she stopped having children. Chapter 30. When Rachel saw that she wasn't having any children, she became jealous of her sister. "Give me children or I'll die," she exclaimed to Jacob. Jacob flew into a rage. "Am I God?" he asked. "He is the only one able to give you children." Then Rachel told him, "Sleep with my servant Bilhah, and she will bear children for me." So Rachel gave him Bilhah to be his wife, and Jacob slept with her. Bilhah became pregnant and presented him with a son. Rachel named him Dan, for she said, "God has vindicated me. He has heard my request and given me a son." Then Bilhah became pregnant again and gave Jacob a second son. Rachel named him Naphtali, for she said, "I've had an intense struggle with my sister, and I am winning." Meanwhile, Leah realized that she wasn't getting pregnant anymore, so she gave her servant Zilpah to Jacob to be his wife. Soon Zilpah presented him with another son. Leah named him Gad, for she said, "How fortunate I am." Then Zilpah produced a second son, and Leah named him Asher, for she said, "What joy is mine! The other women will consider me happy indeed." One day during the wheat harvest, Reuben found some mandrakes growing in a field and brought the roots to his mother Leah. Rachel begged Leah to give some of them to her. But Leah angrily replied, "Wasn't it enough that you stole my husband? Now will you steal my son's mandrake roots too?" Rachel said, "I will let him sleep with you tonight in exchange for the mandrake roots." So that evening, as Jacob was coming home from the fields, Leah went out to meet him. "You must sleep with me tonight," she said. "I have paid for you with some mandrake roots my son has found." So Jacob slept with her, and God answered her prayers. She became pregnant again and gave birth to her fifth son. She named him Issachar, for she said, "God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband as a wife." Then she became pregnant again and had a sixth son. She named him Zebulun, for she said, "God has given me good gifts for my husband. Now he will honor me, for I have given him 6 sons." Later she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel's plight and answered her prayers by giving her a child. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son. "God has removed my shame," she said. And she named him Joseph, for she said, "May the Lord give me yet another son." Soon after Joseph was born to Rachel, Jacob said to Laban, "I want to go back home. Let me take my wives and children, for I have earned them from you. Let me be on my way. You know I have fully paid for them with my service to you." "Please don't leave me," Laban replied. "I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because you are here. How much do I owe you? Whatever it is, I'll pay it." Jacob replied, "You know how faithfully I've served you through these many years, and how your flocks and herds have grown. You had little indeed before I came, and your wealth has increased enormously. The Lord has blessed you from everything I do. But now what about me? When should I provide for my own family?" "What wages do you want?" Laban asked again. Jacob replied, "Don't give me anything at all. Just do one thing, and I'll go back to work for you. Let me go out among your flocks today and remove all the sheep and goats that are speckled or spotted, along with all the dark-colored sheep. Give them to me as my wages. This will make it easy for you to see whether or not I have been honest. If you find in my flock any white sheep or goats that are not speckled, you will know that I have stolen them from you." "All right," Laban replied. "It will be as you have said." But that very day Laban went out and removed all the male goats that were speckled and spotted, the females that were speckled and spotted with any white patches, and all the dark-colored sheep. he placed them in the care of his sons, and they took them 3 days' distance from where Jacob was. Meanwhile Jacob stayed and cared for Laban's flock. Now Jacob took fresh shoots from poplar, almond, and plane trees, and peeled off strips of the bark to make white streaks on them. Then he set up these peeled branches beside the watering troughs, so Laban's flocks would see them as they came to drink, for that was when they mated. So when the flocks mated in front of the white streaked branches, all of their offspring were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Jacob added them to his own flock, thus separating the lambs from Laban's flock. Then at mating time he turned the flocks toward the streaked and dark-colored rams in Laban's flock. This is how he built his flock from Laban's. Whenever the stronger females were ready to mate, Jacob set up the peeled branches in front of them. But he didn't do this with the weaker ones, so the weaker lambs belonged to Laban, and the stronger ones were Jacob's. As a result, Jacob's flocks increased rapidly, and he became very wealthy, with many servants, camels, and donkeys. Chapter 31. But Jacob soon learned that Laban's sons were beginning to grumble. "Jacob has robbed our father," they said. "All his wealth has been gained at our father's expense." And Jacob began to notice a considerable cooling in Laban's attitude toward him. Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your father and grandfather, and to your relatives there, and I will be with you." Jacob called Rachel and Leah out to the field where he was watching the flocks, so he could talk things over with them. "Your father has turned against me and is not treating me like he used to," he told them. "But the God of my father has been with me. You know how hard I have worked for your father. But he has tricked me, breaking his wage agreement with me again and again. But God has not allowed him to do me any harm. For if he said the speckled animals were mine, the whole flock began to produce speckled lambs. And when he changed his mind and said I could have the streaked ones, then all the lambs were born streaked. In this way God has made me wealthy at your father's expense." During the mating season, I had a dream and saw that the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Then in my dream the angel of God said to me, "Jacob," and I replied, "Yes, I'm listening." The angel said, "Look, and you will see that only the streaked, speckled, and spotted males are mating with the females of your flock. For I have seen all that Laban has done to you. I am the God you met at Bethel, the place where you anointed the pillar of stone and made a vow to serve me. Now leave this country and return to the land you came from." Rachel and Leah said, "That's fine with us. There's nothing for us here. None of our father's wealth will come to us anyway. He has reduced our rights to those of foreign women. He sold us, and what he received for us has disappeared. The riches God has given you from our father are legally ours, and our children's to begin with. So go ahead and do whatever God has told you." So Jacob put his wives and children on camels. He drove the flocks in front of him, all the livestock he had acquired at Padan Aram, and set out on his journey to the land of Canaan where his father Isaac lived. At the time they left, Laban was some distance away, shearing his sheep. Rachel stole her father's household gods and took them with her. They set out secretly and never told Laban they were leaving. Jacob took all his possessions with him and crossed the Euphrates River, heading for the territory of Gilead. Laban didn't learn of their flight for 3 days. But when he did, he gathered a group of his relatives and set out in hot pursuit. He caught up with them 7 days later in the hill country of Gilead. But the previous night God had appeared to Laban in a dream. "Be careful about what you say to Jacob," he was told. So when Laban caught up with Jacob as he was camped in the hill country of Gilead, he set up his camp not far from Jacob's. "What do you mean by sneaking off like this?" Laban demanded. "Are my daughters prisoners, the plunder of war, that you have stolen them away like this? Why did you slip away secretly? I would have given you a farewell party with joyful singing accompanied by tambourines and harps. Why didn't you let me kiss my daughters and grandchildren and tell them goodbye? You have acted very foolishly. I could destroy you, but the God of your father appeared to me last night and told me, 'Be careful about what you say to Jacob.' I know you feel you must go, and you long intensely for your childhood home. But why have you stolen my household gods?" "I rushed away because I was afraid," Jacob answered. "I said to myself, he'll take his daughters from me by force. But as for your household gods, let the person who has taken them die. If you find anything that belongs to you, I swear before all these relatives of ours, I will give it back without question." But Jacob didn't know that Rachel had taken them. Laban went first into Jacob's tent to search there, then into Leah's, and then he searched the tents of the 2 concubines, but he didn't find the gods. Finally he went into Rachel's tent. Rachel had taken the household gods and had stuffed them into her camel saddle, and now she was sitting on them. So although Laban searched all the tents, he couldn't find them. "Forgive my not getting up, father," Rachel explained. "I'm having my monthly period." So despite his thorough search, Laban didn't find them. Then Jacob became very angry. "What did you find?" he demanded of Laban. "What is my crime? You have chased me as though I were a criminal. You have searched through everything I own. Now show me what you have found that belongs to you. Set it out here in front of us, before our relatives, for all to see. Let them decide who is the real owner. 20 years I have been with you. In all that time I cared for your sheep and goats so they produced healthy offspring. In all those years I never touched a single ram of yours for food. If any were attacked and killed by wild animals, did I show them to you and ask you to reduce the count of your flock? No, I took the loss. You made me pay for every animal stolen from the flocks, whether the loss was my fault or not. I worked for you through the scorching heat of the day and through cold and sleepless nights. Yes, 20 years, 14 of them earning your 2 daughters, and 6 years to get the flock. And you have reduced my wages 10 times. In fact, except for the grace of God, the God of my grandfather Abraham, the awe-inspiring God of my father Isaac, you would have sent me off without a penny to my name. But God has seen your cruelty and my hard work. That is why he appeared to you last night and vindicated me." Then Laban replied to Jacob, "These women are my daughters, and these children are my grandchildren, and these flocks and all that you have, all are mine, but what can I do now to my own daughters and grandchildren? Come now, and we will make a peace treaty, you and I, and we will live by its terms." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a monument. He also told his men to gather stones and pile them up in a heap. Jacob and Laban then sat down beside the pile of stones to share a meal. They named it Witness Pile, which is Jigar-Sehajutha in Laban's language, and Galeed in Jacob's. "This pile of stones will stand as a witness to remind us of our agreement," Laban said. This place was also called Mizpah, for Laban said, "May the Lord keep watch between us to make sure that we keep this treaty when we are out of each other's sight. I won't know about it if you are harsh to my daughters or if you take other wives, but God will see it. This heap of stones and this pillar stand between us as a witness of our vows. I will not cross this line to harm you, and you will not cross it to harm me. I call on the God of our ancestors, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of my grandfather Nahor, to punish either one of us who harms the other." So Jacob took an oath before the awesome God of his father Isaac to respect the boundary line. Then Jacob presented a sacrifice to God and invited everyone to a feast. Afterward they spent the night there in the hills. Laban got up early the next morning, and he kissed his daughters and grandchildren and blessed them. Then he returned home. Chapter 32. As Jacob and his household started on their way again, angels of God came to meet him. When Jacob saw them, he exclaimed, "This is God's camp." So he named the place Mahanaim. Jacob now sent messengers to his brother Esau in Edom, the land of Seir. He told them, "Give this message to my master Esau. Humble greetings from your servant Jacob. I have been living with Uncle Laban until recently, and now I own oxen, donkeys, sheep, goats, and many servants, both men and women. I have sent these messengers to inform you of my coming, hoping that you will be friendly to us." The messengers returned with the news that Esau was on his way to meet Jacob with an army of 400 men. Jacob was terrified at the news. He divided his household, along with the flocks and herds and camels, into 2 camps. He thought, if Esau attacks one group, perhaps the other can escape. Then Jacob prayed, "O God of my grandfather Abraham and my father Isaac, O Lord, you told me to return to my land and to my relatives, and you promised to treat me kindly. I am not worthy of all the faithfulness and unfailing love you have shown to me, your servant. When I left home, I owned nothing except a walking stick, and now my household fills 2 camps. O Lord, please rescue me from my brother Esau. I am afraid that he is coming to kill me along with my wives and children. But you promised to treat me kindly and to multiply my descendants until they become as numerous as the sands along the seashore, too many to count." Jacob stayed where he was for the night and prepared a present for Esau. 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He told his servants to lead them on ahead, each group of animals by itself, separated by a distance in between. He gave these instructions to the men leading the first group. "When you meet Esau, he will ask, 'Where are you going? Whose servants are you? Whose animals are these?' You should reply, 'These belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present for his master Esau. He is coming right behind us.'" Jacob gave the same instructions to each of the herdsmen and told them, "You are all to say the same thing to Esau when you see him. And be sure to say, 'Your servant Jacob is right behind us.'" Jacob's plan was to appease Esau with the presents before meeting him face to face. Perhaps, Jacob hoped, he will be friendly to us. So the presents were sent on ahead, and Jacob spent that night in the camp. But during the night Jacob got up and sent his 2 wives, 2 concubines, and 11 sons across the Jabbok River. After they were on the other side, he sent over all his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until dawn. When the man saw that he couldn't win the match, he struck Jacob's hip and knocked it out of joint at the socket. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is dawn." But Jacob panted, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked. He replied, "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob," the man told him. "It is now Israel, because you have struggled with both God and men and have won." "What is your name?" Jacob asked him. "Why do you ask?" the man replied. Then he blessed Jacob there. Jacob named the place Peniel, face of God, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared." The sun rose as he left Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. That is why even today the people of Israel don't eat meat from near the hip, in memory of what happened that night. Chapter 33. Then in the distance Jacob saw Esau coming with his 400 men. Jacob now arranged his family into a column, with his 2 concubines and their children at the front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then Jacob went on ahead. As he approached his brother, he bowed low 7 times before him. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him affectionately and kissed him. Both of them were in tears. Then Esau looked at the women and children and asked, "Who are these people with you?" "These are the children God has graciously given to me," Jacob replied. Then the concubines came forward with their children and bowed low before him. Next Leah came with her children, and they bowed down. Finally Rachel and Joseph came and made their vows. "And what were all the flocks and herds I met as I came?" Esau asked. Jacob replied, "They are gifts, my lord, to ensure your goodwill." "Brother, I have plenty," Esau answered. "Keep what you have." "No, please accept them," Jacob said. "For what a relief it is to see your friendly smile. It is like seeing the smile of God. Please take my gifts, for God has been very generous to me. I have more than enough." Jacob continued to insist. So Esau finally accepted them. "Well, let's be going," Esau said. "I will stay with you and lead the way." But Jacob replied, "You can see, my lord, that some of the children are very young, and the flocks and herds have their young too. If they are driven too hard, they may die. So go on ahead of us. We will follow at our own pace and meet you at Seir." "Well," Esau said, "at least let me leave some of my men to guide and protect you."
"There is no reason for you to be so kind to me," Jacob insisted.
So Esau started back to Seir that same day. Meanwhile, Jacob and his household traveled on to Succoth. There he built himself a house and made shelters for his flocks and herds. That is why the place was named Succoth. Then they arrived safely at Shechem in Canaan, and they set up camp just outside the town. Jacob bought the land he camped on from the family of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of silver. And there he built an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. Chapter 34. One day Dinah, Leah's daughter, went to visit some of the young women who lived in the area. But when the local prince Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, saw her, he took her and raped her. But Shechem's love for Dinah was strong, and he tried to win her affection. He even spoke to his father about it. "Get this girl for me," he demanded. "I want to marry her." Word soon reached Jacob that his daughter had been defiled. But his sons were out in the fields herding cattle, so he did nothing until they returned. Meanwhile, Hamor, Shechem's father, came out to discuss the matter with Jacob. He arrived just as Jacob's sons were coming in from the fields. They were shocked and furious that their sister had been raped. Shechem had done a disgraceful thing against Jacob's family, a thing that should never have been done. Hamor told Jacob and his sons, "My son Shechem is truly in love with your daughter, and he longs for her to be his wife. Please, let him marry her. We invite you to let your daughters marry our sons, and we will give our daughters as wives for your young men. And you may live among us. The land is open to you. Settle here and trade with us. You are free to acquire property among us." Then Shechem addressed Dinah's father and brothers. "Please be kind to me and let me have her as my wife," he begged. "I will give whatever you require. No matter what dowry or gift you demand, I will pay it. Only give me the girl as my wife." But Dinah's brothers deceived Shechem and Hamor because of what Shechem had done to their sister. They said to them, "We couldn't possibly allow this because you aren't circumcised. It would be a disgrace for her to marry a man like you. But here is a solution. If every man among you will be circumcised like we are, we will intermarry with you and live here and unite with you to become one people. Otherwise, we will take her and be on our way." Hamor and Shechem gladly agreed, and Shechem lost no time in acting on this request, for he wanted Dinah desperately. Shechem was a highly respected member of his family, and he appeared with his father before the town leaders to present this proposal. "Those men are our friends," they said. "Let's invite them to live here among us and ply their trade, for the land is large enough to hold them, and we can intermarry with them. They will consider staying here only on one condition. Every one of us men must be circumcised just as they are. But But if we do this, all their flocks and possessions will become ours. Come, let's agree to this so they will settle here among us." So all the men agreed and were circumcised. But 3 days later, when their wounds were still sore, 2 of Dinah's brothers, Simeon and Levi, took their swords, entered the town without opposition, and slaughtered every man there, including Hamor and Shechem. They rescued Dinah from Shechem's house and returned to their camp. And all of Jacob's sons plundered the town because their sister had been defiled there. They seized all the flocks and herds and donkeys, everything they could lay their hands on, both inside the town and outside in the fields. They also took all the women and children and wealth of every kind. Afterward Jacob said to Levi and Simeon, "You have made me stink among all the people of this land, among all the Canaanites and Perizzites. There are so few that they will come and crush us. We will all be killed. Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" They retorted angrily.